All right. Hey, Matt. So pumped for this conversation today. Can't wait to dive right in. Before we do, I always, of course, have to just give a little opener, little spiel on how we met, how we came to be friends. And really, it was your mom was over at Fresh Time giving out little samples, and my daughter and I were standing in the grocery, and I was like, "What is this?" When I started looking at the ingredients and the label, and Kombuchade was just calling to us, and now we are full-time converters. This is the only kombucha that we drink. We love it in our house and really get twitchy when it's not around. So today we are going to be really focusing on fueling from the inside out, our gut health, our muscle building, our fat burning, and we're going to feature the importance of kombuchade here with founder and developer Matt Lancor. And we just want to talk about what if building, like the key to building muscle and burning fat and feeling really unstoppable wasn't just about what you do at the gym or on the court, but what's happening in your gut? Because, like you mentioned before, Matt, too, it's like so many people don't really realize that there's something happening with their gut. And we're going to really dive into a lot of those symptoms and what you might be experiencing, because there might be a flag here that really might shed some light on some of the things that you've been dealing with that really you haven't quite made the connection with just yet.
Heck yeah. I'm happy to be here, Ashley. I mean, for me, it was simple. I just was a jock. Like you said, my main targets were building muscle and burning fat and competing in rugby. And I didn't think I had any gut issues until I noticed an improvement in using some kombucha products. And I thought, this stuff's great. It tastes good, but it's a little too carbonated, or it was a little
Hmm.
too this or a little too that.
Yeah.
And that was the simple kind of birthplace of kombucha, was just how can I make gut health easy and cool for people in the fitness space.
Well, you've nailed it. You've really nailed it. Honestly, the best kombucha there is out there. I've tried so many different brands, and like you said, the carbonation just can be really throwing. It's almost like you open it up and you're getting like kicked in the face by the carbonation. Kombucha every time is just very subtle. It's very gentle. Like to me, I would describe it almost as the healthy wine. Like it has a very subtle grape undertone to it and just makes you feel like you're being cool when you drink it. The healthy cool. And it just tastes good. Every single flavor is phenomenal. My daughter, my 3.5-year-old drinks it. My husband loves it. It's just, yeah. And so, really, gut health overall, as you said, you didn't really realize that something was going on until you started making those changes. And really, gut health is not just about digestion. It's really our command center for either upregulating or downregulating inflammation, slowing down or speeding up our metabolism, detoxification. It's our immune function. It's has absolutely everything to do with body composition changes. And for those athletes, which is your target population, or really anybody who is active, you're really wanting to capitalize on the opportunity to build muscle, reduce body fat, and change that composition for performance and sport. So today we're going to really dive into that so we can say how can we make fat loss and muscle gain more efficient, more sustainable, and energizing, and all doing it while we are enjoying the beautiful beverage of kombucha.
Well, that was like what I think for me was this realization that uh, I wasn't doing anything for it. It wasn't on my radar 10 years ago that gut health was so important. I think for me, it was all macronutrient focused then.
Hmm.
And the gut health rabbit hole that I fell down made me start thinking about, well, what are those macronutrients made of? Where did those come from? How were those produced? And then how am I breaking those down? How am I actually breaking that stuff apart and absorbing the nutrients of it? And that's when I realized there was this Amazon rainforest ecosystem like thing going on inside of us that I just had no idea. It blows my mind that I just never thought about it, or I never visualized it. And, after I started learning about some of the benefits myself, I wanted to share it with everybody because it just felt like this missing link or this whole new world that was going to answer a lot of questions for us.
That's awesome. And my passion too, and other conversations we've had is I want every single person, any walk of life to have their stool sampled and to do a gut test because it's so important. It is the foundation of our health. We can look at autoimmune conditions and we can pin it back to the gut. We can look at digestion issues or taste preferences and pin it back to the gut. We can look at cravings and energy and pin that back to the gut. And it's just like, and that's really what I've built my career, my passion around is gut health. So I know we could talk all day, but we're specifically talking about how this pertains to the ability to really perform in sport. And so I want to focus, you said something about like absorption. So really just even looking at the gut as like our gateway to absorbing nutrients. It is what helps us absorb vitamins, minerals, and fatty acids. It's what helps us recover, taking the nutrients that we get from food and really being able to repair every single cell in our body. If we can go back to like the macronutrients, like you said, and say, oh, we're so focused on getting in your protein, right, bro? Get your protein in, get your carbs, get your fat. But if you don't have the right mechanisms or the foundational framework to be able to digest and absorb them, you aren't going to get the results that you're looking for.
Mm,
If you don't have fermented foods like kombucha coming into your diet, you aren't going to be setting yourself up for success for really achieving the outcome that you want in sports, performance, or even just in regular health and just being able to recover after exercise as the everyday exerciser too. So thinking about your experience with what changed when you started implementing the
mm.
kombucha or just kombucha in general, and you mentioned this to me on another call, and I just want to highlight it, is you didn't really realize you had this problem. You started drinking it. What was the biggest change in aha where you're like, this is my pivotal point to becoming my passion, and I want to share this with the world, and I want people to know how big an influence is because this was my personal experience.
I think in the immediate term, we're talking 24 to 72 hours. There was pregame poops that were just like easy. And like I don't know how to describe it other than that just like when you're traveling, you're eating out, you're staying in the hotels, your rhythm's off, you're sleeping in a room with three other athletes, like you're just not in your zone. And to have that pain point while traveling was like I
Mm.
didn't know it was such a pain point, but it just solved that for me immediately. And then there was a sense of resilience. I don't know if it was placebo because I felt like I was doing something that the other athletes weren't doing, but come to realize, in research weeks and months and years later that there's all these connections to our mental health and our serotonin and our dopamine and our moods and the way we think and show up in the world. And it continues to blow my mind how interconnected everything is. And I mean, I was even thinking about this today that there's all these like fitness mantras, 1 gram of protein per body weight, and stay away from carbs, or actually, where everything's showing we should probably be eating more carbs than if you're a performance athlete. And it's so confusing out there. And I think at the root of it, like when I really sit down and just primally biologically think about it, our bodies are super resilient. I mean, we were meant to feast on whatever we could find, berries and tubers and carbohydrates and things to give us quick energy so that we could go hunt and then eat meat and take the amino acids and have it rebuild ourselves. So we're not this like static thing that it's so easy to take from mainstream media, which is drink a liter of water, a gram of protein per body weight. Like, but that whole core of it is built around a healthy ecosystem and healthy microbes inside of us. And if we have that healthy ecosystem, we can digest and move through and transition between fat burning and carbohydrate burning and rebuilding with our proteins, but only when the gut is balanced. And so I think there's the moment for me was realizing everybody was focusing on like only 20% of what mattered, which was
Mhm.
the diet and what it was and the macronutrients and the timing and the amounts and all this stuff. But really at the core of it, if your gut lining is compromised and stuff's just floating out into your bloodstream and into your body, you're not going to be able to get any of those nutrients. And you're not going to effectively be able to turn them into anything if you don't have the right microbes down there. And that just was a huge, like, eureka moment for me, that I could be eating grass and whatever, berries and whatever I could find if I were stuck in the forest, and my microbiome would adjust over time, provided it was stable from birth. And then it goes
Mhm.
into another rabbit hole of how we're born and how we inherit microbiome from our mothers and our parents, and the antibiotic sprees that I'm sure tons of us have been exposed to. So it just became this like whole new world that even now I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg in terms of understanding.
Absolutely. We could literally have a whole series on this, Matt. We can go off in all these different tangents. And to your point too, going back to just the adjustment of the ecosystem of the microbiome, because like you said, you can put yourself in an environment and have things completely shift. You have people, whether they're traveling or whether they're in sport or whether they're very stressed or whether they're going through a period of complete happiness, like that's going to actually impact your gut. That's going to impact your microbiome because it's going to influence your hormones and it's going to impact your organs and it's going to impact your thoughts, your emotions. Exactly. So, like you said before about the mental health piece of it, I'm always telling people, you can go to your endocrinologist or your gastroenterologist or this person, this physician. And it's like we're treating the body as if it's all these different separate systems.
Mhm.
Logically, it makes no sense because your gut is connected to every single component of every single cell of every single organ. And so if we look at it like that as being the defining factor of our health, of our resilience, like you mentioned, being resilient or feeling like maybe the placebo effect, but really creating a stronger resilience towards other things that maybe would throw other athletes or throw other people off on your team where you're like, I no longer have this leaky gut. I'm absorbing the nutrients I'm taking in. I'm feeding my microbiome with healthy fibers so that it can proliferate and grow new bacteria. And from that, I'm feeling more mentally stable, emotionally stable, right? And from that, I'm able to then perform better. So lots of different intricacies of it, but it's really just, I'm just so glad we've connected, and it's been really cool to get to know you a bit and learn about your story and really what came to fruition. And I think another really important thing to mention about Kombuchade as we talked through, our topics here is the quality. You guys are so,
Mm,
so focused, and this is what really matters to me too, is you're so focused on the quality and the sourcing. And we just briefly spoke about, the transition and the salt you guys are using too, and really looking at that as a factor. So if you could just briefly speak on that too, I'd love to share that with our audiences too.
for sure. I mean, I used to work in industrial automation, so I got to see lots of different hyper processed food manufacturing, and inside of that industry, it's tough to see people eat that stuff after you've seen it being made. And I think
Yeah.
after having this realization of how important our gut is and how important it is that these nutrients we're eating can be broken down and absorbed into our bodies, it just really made me want to think about the entire supply chain and how could we make this as clean as possible and figure out what some of the issues are, right? I mean, water, you got to start with water. Water isn't just water. Water is a rabbit hole in and of itself. But we put it through 6 different stages of filtration to make sure that there's certain things in the water that aren't there, and then we rehydrate it with minerals and elements, like you said, now coming from the ancient seas of Utah. So making sure we're finding these ingredients and they're being harvested by partners, right? Not just suppliers who we're buying this stuff from. And the herbs and teas are all direct trade through Rishi Botanicals out of Milwaukee. All of our
Mm.
packaging is made here in the United States. We design it in house using local artists and talent. And it's really important to me where this stuff comes from and the life cycle of it, and just making sure that the product that we're putting in inside of ourselves, right? Something we'd be proud of to consume and not only recommend to others.
Absolutely. And it feels, honestly, when you drink kombucha, it just feels so refreshing. Like the thirst you never thought you would get quenched gets quenched. It really is. I'm like, it is. That's how I mean, my
That's
husband
a
and I
good
say,
way
I'm
to
like,
put it, because I don't know how to describe it sometimes. And the best way I get people there is when I feel like I don't have it. All of a sudden, I'm like, what is this urge? It's not just that I'm thirsty. It's that there's something in my gut that's just signaling to me, like, hey, we'd enjoy a little bit more of that fermented tea juice, please.
this magic potion. Yeah, it really it does. And another piece to that too is you guys have one of the lowest sugar contents that I've seen in kombucha. And that's what a lot of questions that I get is, well, what
Mm,
about, kombucha has sugar in it? And I would say, well, it is part of the fermentation process, and it's really what is providing you with those good bacterial bugs, the probiotic source. And really, even there's a point to that with the prebiotic piece that you guys also include, because there's the feeding of those good bugs and the proliferation of more of those good bacteria. And other brands have had a lot more sugar in them, and yours is really all just there's none added. It's just all coming from the source.
yep, that was another thing that I personally just wanted in a product as a probiotic drink was the sugar's raw, regeneratively farmed cane sugar from southern Florida, right? So we're already starting with something that I would argue, if you're an active person, you could have some cane sugar. And I think it leads to an interesting discussion, right? Of like sugar getting this rap, but really it's the microbes that you're feeding that matter more, I think, than the sugar. Because if I'm feeding these microbes an energy source and I'm burning that energy source, what's the harm to me? Right? I haven't been able to grasp that yet. I keep hearing this sugar's bad, don't eat sugar, but then we can have monk fruit and stevia and allulose and some of these are like, it doesn't make sense to me that I couldn't consume a clean energy source in
Mhm.
that way if my microbes are balanced, right?
It's a really, really good topic. And again, I'm talking about this a lot with my one clients, and that's what gets brought up the most when we talk about kombucha. And what I speak to is one, the pairings. First, we need to make sure that you are detoxing, that you're having normal bowel movements, that you have regularity within your system, that your stress levels are low. Like where we talk through all those things that impact when you have sugar coming into your body, how that can impact your blood sugar and your insulin response, and then your cortisol, and how that all kind of is in a cascade in a system. So, yeah, so there are variables that we have to think through, like how active the individual is and how optimal, optimal is their gut functioning to begin with. If there's somebody who's in a dysbiotic state and they're very toxic loaded, we really are talking about like eliminating those sugars, because that can cause more inflammation and perpetuate, like you said, with the bacterial overgrowth that already exists. So we have to go through some deep removal and really detoxing. For the longest time, I didn't use that word, but it is so essential. Like the liver does it. We need our bodies to do it. Having a bowel
Yeah.
movement, detoxing. Like, let's just be real with that. It's so important for us to have regularity within our stooling. And so to that point of sugar is really like depend upon who we're talking about, depend upon the source we're talking about, how much is it coming in, and ultimately what's the effect on that individual's body. But in all, if you have your kombucha alongside your protein, your healthy fats, you treat it as partial of your carbohydrate intake, it's 7 grams. I mean, it's very low in comparison to, people can go back and forth on talking about like Diet Coke. I would 1000% prefer that you drink a kombucha to a Diet Coke that's full of chemicals that literally will change the taste, your perception of taste and the palate, that affects your microbiome in a negative way and can cause leaky gut. Like let's look at, apples to oranges here, like what truly matters in the grand scheme of things. So anyways, maybe we should do a whole topic on sugar, but I want to pull us back into our main topic of the day, which is really talking about fat burning, inflammation,
Mm,
gut function, and really when it comes to looking at this through the lens of building muscle and burning fat. So we already talked about absorbing. We already talked about the gateway of getting any proteins, carbs, or fats into our cells by being able to digest them, making sure the microbiome is helping to impact muscle recovery, reducing inflammation, helping to support energy production, reducing leaky gut or any cravings. And again, the stress connection there. I wanted to just highlight for a second, and can chime in on this too, is when you are an athlete and when you are in practice, and I'm going to lean into your expertise here because I am not an athlete. I am an avid lifter, but I am not an athlete by sports definition. So when you are in training, right, you have certain hours or minutes of a day, hours of a week, and that is a low tier system. That is a stress in itself. That if you have that in combination with undernourishment, in combination with a leaky gut, in combination with no sleep, like you mentioned too, and no output, your brain and your performance and your body fat storage will be impacted, hands down. And so what you mentioned too before is you saw that when you started making that transition as healing the gut. Did you notice any body comp changes or any muscle shifts or recovery or performance indicators that were really like ahas in that process of adding the kombucha into your role?
I did. Looking back on it, I noticed because it was subtle. It was like subtle changes over time, but I would say it's almost like I didn't need to eat as much food as, which
Mm,
is also kind of, it was counterintuitive at the time, but I think I was digesting and breaking stuff down more efficiently, and
yes.
I felt like I didn't need to eat as much,
Hmm.
which was kind of throwing me off in the beginning. I was start because so I started force feeding myself a little bit because like I'm under eating,
Mm,
but then I came into some reading about how like your microbiome will actually consume the food differently depending on the species, and so you may be getting
yes.
more nourishment.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
that was something I noticed. So I kind of leaned out a little bit, but it was like intuitive in a way. I don't know. It was very interesting.
yeah, that's brilliant because it makes complete sense when we look at the biology of it, is when you are taking things in at a faster rate, you're absorbing them, you're actually breaking them down, and you are utilizing it, your body isn't going to demand you continue to eat more because let's say, again, things are getting leaked, leaky gut, or not absorbing, your body is demanding you to put more fuel, more food in the system to make up for the lack of what is being replenished.
Mm,
So you then therefore no longer have that drive to continue to eat, need, or crave more, and your body is satisfied with less. And that makes so much sense. I talk about that so much too when it comes to cravings and working with people initially. And then I'm like, we are literally going to mark this conversation now. And I'm going to ask you the same question in like 6 weeks from now. And you're going to tell me, actually, I no longer crave this thing, or I no longer feel like I'm eating past discomfort, or like I really feel like I'm more in tune with what
mhm.
my body is actually, what feedback I'm actually getting, what my body is telling me. It makes so much
Yes,
sense because again, the system, the brain, but the brain of our body really is a gut. And it's like, then everything just starts communicating much more efficiently at a faster rate. And you no longer need to supplement with more and more and more to get the same effect.
that's it. I mean, I was a lot more sensitive to
Uh-huh.
the food. Like I was thrown off more when I would eat more garbage than I used to be, which also was like, what is this? Why am I so sensitive to all this food stuff now? And it was like, oh, maybe I just didn't notice it before. I was so
Mm.
disconnected from my gut to my brain that I wasn't feeling these shifts or these changes.
That could absolutely be part of it. Another part of it too is that you've now changed the ecosystem. So your body's like, heck no, I do not want those foods coming in here. Like we are
Yeah.
building something completely different. And now I no longer have those same undesirable bugs, undesirable bacteria that are present that were wanting you to eat more of those foods. So now you go from, again, no longer craving it, no longer desiring it. And when you eat it, you almost feel ill. It's your body sign of
Mm.
being like, no, we are not going to go that route again. We've been there, done that. That's old news, old version. And we're moving on to something greater and even better.
There's that. And there's one other thing that popped into my head too, and I still don't know what was going on with it, but I almost felt like the process between when your body flips from burning carbohydrates to burning fat,
Mm,
that transition stopped feeling like I was like grinding gears. There was
mm,
this like fasted cardio or like fasted state that I could operate in that I didn't have access to before. And I'm
mm,
still experimenting with this, but like I can do a 24-hour fast and go weight train and, pull heavy barbell lifts. And I don't know that I could do that. Like I used to really rely on having consistent meals or snacking. And now I have access to this like different primal fasted state where I'm still fully energized, which is, I
mm.
don't know what's going on with the science. I've just heard other people also kind of reference that.
Well, I think you put it in a simple format before when you talked about like our primal resilience is we feasted and then we like fasted and then we had different parts. And I talk about this a lot in our female population too, is talking about cycling and where there's times to fast, where there's times to nourish, where we want to pull back on carbs, where we want to push because cyclically and also throughout, primally, right, is we could see that there are times that we can push and lean into it and then times that we wouldn't have it.
Mhm.
So to your point of being in a more primed state to be able to withstand the activity and be able to push through it and have the energy to do it because you've now trained your body to expect to be more resilient. And your microbiome now is like, yes, great. Okay, this fasted state is actually going to help me work on this. And having those little pulses of fasting periods can be really, really powerful for cellular turnover, for detoxification, for again, building up good microbes. So, depending on who I'm talking to, right, and the mindset of the
Yeah.
person that we're speaking with, obviously, we're not, doing this with any disordered eating patterns, but really, when we get to the science of it and we talk more about how our sustained energy is impacted by having a solid immune system, solid gut, it makes complete sense that you would experience that because your body is built for something greater, for those times of fasting and for those times of feasting. And knowing that your body will have both ends of the spectrum is actually super healthy. Super healthy. I think more, I mean, there's so much more research coming out now with periods of fasting and cycling, and especially for the female population where a lot of research has been done with men. And I think this is really important for athletes too, because whenever we look at again pulsing, whether it be a fast or a feast or a microbiome or a detox or a replenishment stage, we kind of go through all those pieces, is how that's going to benefit the athlete from speaking to their hormone side. And when your gut is off balance or dysbiotic, your hormones are going to be influenced. So how
Mm.
does that impact your performance? How does that impact your ability to gain muscle? How does that impact your ability to lose fat? It absolutely impacts it all because it's constantly communicating. You mentioned something about serotonin. 90% of serotonin is made in the gut. Okay, well, if your gut is off, like you might not be feeling that happy, or maybe you think you're happy, but what is true happiness? Have you become enlightened or truly awakened? I'll say, right? Like awakened, like feeling like this state that you're in right now is more of the awakened state than back when before you were just doing things and it was very surface level macros, 1 liter of water, right? That type of mindset. You understand now that there's so much depth to what our bodies can experience and how we can really push and pull in different directions to really get those optimal outcomes. especially in sports and performance.
Yeah, it's so important. I think it's just like a whole, like I said, it was this whole new world I feel like I fell into and just kind of inherited a responsibility to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that I had on our list, I think it's important we go over too is when we're talking about building muscle, let's just go back to that for a second. When you can't, when your body isn't absorbing the amino acids, let's just say like go back to the macros for a second, when you're not absorbing amino acids. And sometimes when we look at that, if I'm doing a stool sample on someone, or they might have a preference, or they're saying like, if I start to eat proteins, like I feel awful, or I feel like a heaviness, or I feel so much fatigue, or I get the meat sweats, whatever the person is experiencing. I'm always looking at what's outside of what is also going on in your microbiome, what's going on in your stomach. Do you have enough
Mm,
acid in your stomach to actually, we want our stomachs to be so acidic that if the outside contents of your stomach was on your skin, it would burn a hole. Like we want that environment to be ready. And so when we drink, like kombucha as an example, and you have and it does actually promote more of a acidic rather than alkaline environment of the stomach, and which is good. We need that. And so when we improve the acidity of the stomach, we have better enzyme sufficiency. We have a better ability to then break down these amino acids. Therefore, we have better capacity to create muscle because that's where all of our cells, all of our myocytes, all our muscle cells stem from the production of. And so, yeah, even just like thinking about how that gets absorbed in the cell, but also how when we combine efforts of overall digestion and the microbiome and stomach acidity and all those together, that's where we get the trifecta of really seeing a difference in the muscle. There have been times too in my training and like even before our wedding and other things that I've done where trying to get lean or trying to prepare for things or a training. And looking back, I know that high levels of stress and not nourishing my microbiome was not getting me the results. Yeah, I was still lean and yeah, I was still fit
mm.
in those things, but it's just like it could have been at a whole nother level if I know what I know now.
Yeah,
You
I
know?
that's what I want to share. Like I wish I had this when I was a high school athlete.
Ah,
And I think it's so important too. It makes me think it was just the other day I heard someone this myth that you're going to get bulky if you lift weights and eat. And I think
that's a very
what
common topic I have with women.
what we're finding is lifting weights is actually going to make you leaner, and that muscle's going to burn more fat and burn more calories for you while you sleep. And it's a
Absolutely.
whole cycle that get the gut going, build the muscle mass, and it just becomes this flywheel that will continuously burn calories for you.
I'm always trying to get my clients to strength train. Like walking is great, running has its benefits. However, the strength training is gold. Like gold for hormones, gold for, like you just said, even and what it's going to do even overnight is that burning and also good burning. Also, even just being able to actually let that shine through. Some people say, "Oh, I'm strength training, but I'm not actually seeing the muscle." Well, if that's the case, then again, you probably have some dysbiosis going on in your gut. Because if you're
Mm.
not losing the body fat, but yet the muscle is underneath and it's not as defined as you'd like it to show up, then likely we're just seeing this miscommunication between the gut and the body and what's happening on the outside. But the hormones,
What's cool too is I've seen that exercise alone will actually positively influence microbiome health. And it
absolutely.
makes sense if you think about it, right? Like you're stressing that system, you're making it work, there's blood flow going on, you've got
Yeah.
fluid exchanges going on,
More
and
oxygen.
only the tougher microbes are going to survive.
Absolutely. And the oxygen flow, being able to get more oxygen to the body, you're breathing deeper. I mean, how many studies have been done on deep breathing and the benefits
Mhm.
of that feeding into your microbiome too? Like that's a really cool thing to see. So I think again, we could go on and on and on about all these different sectors of why this is important, but know that anybody that's watching or listening, like Kombuchade, if you have not tried it yet, like you have to get your hands on one of these. We are now at the point of we've ordered cases from you guys that we are now going to get a kegerator, and we are going to have a kegerator in our house of kombucha. Kegs of kombucha. I've never had a keg or even touched a keg in my life, but I would do that for kombucha. And just some of the things, if you can take away some tips today, in talking about just like overall hydration and gut support. And I'll say one thing before I speak on that. You mentioned too the importance of really knowing how to nourish the body and doing this. Like, I wish I knew this as a high school student. My 3.5-year-old knows what. I mean, she knows of the microbiome, and we eat sauerkraut at almost every meal, and she has kombucha with us, and like understanding these things at such an early age. She can tell you what any protein source is. I'm bragging on her right now, but
That's
I
so
think it's
cute.
so important that we teach the next generations. Like, if you feel like, oh, I'm already at the stage where I've done all my things and I don't want to try new things, like, you can turn the microbiome around in a very short amount of time. You change your habits,
Mhm.
you change what you're eating, what you're drinking, how you're sleeping, how you're stressing. You can literally redesign your microbiome, and you can therefore redesign uh, your physical body and your personality. Like, if you think about it from that level, like, it really, because it's changing the way that you operate, it's changing the way you think, that you feel, and ultimately what's next for you on deck, and passing that on. If we can take a couple steps ourselves in making that change and teaching future generations, we are going to change the world, right? Really, we're going to change the world. So thinking about some top habits, obviously hydration, minerals, starting the day off right. I always say, start your day with water, start your day with minerals. We talked about real salt, and really getting in those electrolytes, and then pairing your kombucha with your meals, getting in your probiotics so that you've got that down pat, making sure you're chewing your food thoroughly, not rushing in the process is another big tip that I talk about a lot, making sure you have daily fermented foods, whether that be sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, really to help feed also those good bacteria and create those postbiotic short chain fatty acids for the immune system regulation. And movement. Movement is not only, as you said, a way to help encourage the good microbes, but also to help you detox, sweating, and motility, getting bowel movements to come out, and really using your kombucha as a strategic support system in your pre and post workout, especially even post workout too, really quenching that thirst. Like I said before, like the kombucha that we drink and all flavors that we've drank, it's like quenching a thirst you never thought you had. It's truly amazing. I love this product. I'm so grateful for you guys. I'm so grateful that your mom was in the store the time that my Alana and I were shopping together, and we got a chance to really try it. And I can't wait to see, where our continued partnership leads us.
Oh, Ashley, that's so sweet. And yeah, I mean, really at the core of it, that was the root of this was how can we make this cool, accessible? How can we lay some breadcrumbs down to get people curious about this topic? Because it is about changing the next generations and to think about a generation of Americans growing up understanding the microbiome, being more in tune with themselves than emotionally and mentally, and what kind of changes that's going to have. I mean, even if we're only able to do that for 100,000 people or even 1 million people, the ripple effect of that is it's going to be mind-boggling. So I'm right there with you on that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, Matt. It's been great.
Yes, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Ashley.
Bye.